But for now, they're going to be the model, and everyone else is watching, especially Phyllis, because she's getting ready for next month. So with that, I'll turn it over to Max, and we'll get started.
Thank you, Dr. Dupree. Ms. James, thank you for allowing us to set the bar at some level, and then everyone can react to that. At your place, you have a three-ring binder that we'll be speaking from, as well as the PowerPoint presentation. We're going to kind of toggle back and forth between a slide and talking points. So on the first slide, basically tonight, I do want y'all to come away with at least three things. The first thing is that the design and construction of facilities does require board action at several key points in the process as far as management oversight, and we'll talk specifically about that. I also hope y'all come to gain an understanding of just the amount of volume and detail involved in putting a public work together. And then I would also like y'all to come away understanding that we are poised and ready to deliver projects in the future, whatever those may look like. Ready? Okay, on tab 5 of your book, during the process, you'll be able to go back and forth between the presentation in this particular project workflow. But this is the slide that shows the board management oversight action at each point along the line in a typical construction project. During the project organization, and these are all things that y'all have already done with us. We've already worked together as a team with this. Project organization phase and approval of method of construction and approved design professionals. During the programming phase, we're going to talk a little bit about educational guidelines and construction standards. During the design phase, we're going to talk about the approval of schematic design. During the bidding phase, we're going to talk about approval of the construction contract and/or GMP, guaranteed maximum price. And then during the construction phase, we're going to talk about approval of change orders if the cost exceeds the contract. The Design and Construction Department is located at 2323 Texas Parkway. We're actually right next door to the Progressive High School. We actually share some common parking in the back of the facility. If you ever were to stop by and go around back, you would see some pickup trucks and some vehicles, and those vehicles are equipped with marking materials and measuring instruments and common tools that will allow our project managers to go out and do more than just observe. They can actually mark the ground and make markings and do observations, because good project management requires more than just being at a desk. You actually have to get out in the field and observe what you're doing. This graph here represents our work loop. The green dots are sort of our core business that we're going to touch on tonight. The blue and the orange dots then represent specific activities associated with that core business. So for instance, up here you'll see under building refresh, emergency restoration. That's something we'll be talking about tonight with regard to Willow Ridge High School. And on the surface you would think something involving electrical power at Willow Ridge High School, which is existing, something that breaks might be a facilities department issue, but in fact the facilities department and the design and construction department work hand in hand to get those kind of issues fixed. A couple of takeaways I want you to have from this slide is that it's not just new construction. You can see we've got land purchasing, we've got capital planning, we've got renovation, we've got environmental site assessment. There's things other than just new construction involved with the department. The other thing I want you to take away is that there really is a strong overlap with the facilities department, because once the design and construction department gets done with a project and turns it over, the facilities department actually has to maintain it. So we always have our eye on maintainability and longevity of projects once they're completed. This is the current organizational chart for the department. We have a director, which is Tom Cooper, a newly hired assistant director, Peter Clark. We've got an executive assistant, and we've also got a design and construction specialist. And I would actually like to say a big thanks to Judy Flores for helping us put this presentation together. She has been here through thick and thin. She's sort of our historian, if you will, and knows where all the documents are, and she's just a wealth of resources. We also have a budget associate, and then underneath that line we have the project coordinators, project managers, and down there on the bottom right, senior project, the architect, the current architect position and project designer position are being realigned to project designer, the architect is being realigned to a senior project manager, and the project designer position is being realigned to a project coordinator. And the reason for that is we actually contract out for those services. We think that this is a scalable organizational chart at this point. It's capable of upsizing if we're going to do in-house construction management in the future, and it's also capable of remaining neutral or even downsizing if we're going to use program management. Okay, now again, back to the chart that on tab 5 that we started. We're going to get into the actual new construction and renovation program, the project organizational phase. All projects that we undertake, I want to talk about the owner's perspective. We always operate from an owner's perspective, and being an educational facility, one of our main things we always think about is student safety. You know, as we program projects, we always are thinking about student safety and student schedules. And literally, a real-world example, I can't tell you how many times a project gets underway and we actually have to build in stop time for testing schedules and things like that. So educational facilities are unique in that way. Probably hospitals are also unique in that way, is that your customers require a certain degree of care, and we have to provide that during our projects. Okay, project organization phase. We're going to talk about board approval of the delivery methods. We're going to talk about competitive sealed proposal. We're going to talk about construction manager at risk, and then also talk about evaluation criteria for design professionals. The competitive sealed proposal is our default method of procurement, and it was done in conjunction with board policy update 99 a couple of years ago. And CSP criteria were actually last updated by the board on February 2012. And Tom Cooper is going to walk you through some of the design criteria, or excuse me, some of the evaluation criteria on tab 6 here in your handout.
If you would look at, I guess, page 6.1, we can start out with our present default CSP evaluation criteria. Really, the first page goes along with page 6.2. It really shows how we evaluate contractors after the design work is completed. Then we go out for a CSP, and we solicit many contractors to bid our project. So if you look at some of the items, this is how we evaluate each contractor. We look at their purchase price, their vendor experience, the quality of their services and goods, both what they propose to us and what we've seen in the past with contractors that have done work with us before. So really on this procurement process, if you look at 6.2, it really dials down and gives us a good, strong format to where we can evaluate each proposal that comes in and how they answer the questions and what their background is. We also look at their references and their financial capabilities. They may have very strong financials, but if they have too many projects going on, we may be concerned about them being able to properly finish this project. So those are all the way we evaluate. So CSP is really our preferred method. It's finishing the drawings and putting it out for construction.
One more talking point about that. The board last updated the competitive sealed proposal criteria in February of 2012, and specifically on page 6.1, that purchase price, prior to that date in February, purchase price was actually 50 points in the evaluation matrix, and that is, if you're going to put 50 points for that, you might as well just do a bid. So 30 points gives you a little more sort of a little more leeway to get best value instead of just relying on price altogether.
That's a very good point, because some organizations use high points for purchasing price, and they end up having a product at the end that's not very good. It has high maintenance because you're not being able to see those qualifications. So if we get into CMR, it is more of a process where you're bringing a contractor on board during the design process. So instead of putting drawings out and hoping, in most cases, but we evaluate them architecturally and with our in-house people, we now can track the project from the beginning of design through design development and construction drawings, and being able to track numbers as we go. So if we have a budget and we want to be able to make sure we hit that budget when we bid the project, we can adjust the design as we're going through the process. As you can see, when we do CMAR, we really work in a two-step phase. We do item number 1, organization, 2, experience, 4, which is their past performance. I apologize for the typo, but that should say CMAR methodology. So it's really the process of putting construction costs together. And 5 is also the personnel team. So we take those 4 items and we really dial down from, it could be 15 or 18 contractors that are coming in for a CSP. And just to let you know a little bit about that process, we have a number of team members that have to evaluate each binder, and the binder may come in the size of this. So if we have 18, we have to go through and read everything in that book to be able to evaluate that. After we get through steps, the step 1 process, we get into step 2 process, which is financial strength, reputation, and then their fee, if you will. So that gets us from a large group down to, say, 5 or 6 that we can really dial down and getting into more specifics with them.
So yeah, on that 6.3, in that two-step process, phase 1 represents about 61 points of the scoring, and then phase 2 is 39. So phase 1, we're really trying to select someone based on competence and qualifications, and then we go into phase 2, which is the financial side of it.
And on page 6.4, this is the process that we use to really select our professional services. On larger jobs, it would be an architect, and they hire their civil engineer and MEP in structural. On a smaller job, we may hire a structural engineer directly to do a foundation or an exterior brick wall that's cracking, something like that. But it's still the same process, and we use this, as you can see, the firm's approach to innovative designs, and more importantly, how they look at lead and air quality and electrical consumption, power consumption, things like that. The next one really gets into their experience in doing actual projects, building schools. What are their strong points? Where are their weak points? We really try to dial down on taking an architect or an organization and putting it specifically to the needs of that particular project we have coming up. Qualifications of the actual personnel that are going to work on the job. We could hire an architectural firm with 100 people, but there's only going to be 5 or 10 people that are going to be working on the job. So we actually want those people's resumes, and we review those in detail so to see what their background is for our specific project. And then the last one there on number 4 really gets into innovation of design, but how many projects have your team and your company worked with contractors? Sometimes that can be a difficult situation where you're bringing a contractor into the design team environment and having them be very strong in, we can't afford that, or that really doesn't fit in our budget, so that we can maintain our budget at the end of the process. And again, you can see the points, and we try to weigh them evenly so that we've got good input across the board that we can evaluate them for a project. On the next slide, 6.5, I really wanted to try to find something that was very independent and open to talk about the process of CSP versus CMAR, so we could talk about which project should be used for which type of a purchasing type situation. And what I was really surprised to find out was the study was put together in November of 2007 by the American Council of the Engineering Companies. And basically what they've determined, as you can see, is there's advantages and disadvantages with both programs. CSP is very good at using an owner's criteria of what they want in the building and how they want it designed. It's a good pricing coefficient, and it really defines, we get to define the scope of the work before the bid goes out, meaning we hire the architect. The disadvantage on that can be that because we don't have the construction company early on, we could have a problem in the bid to where the bid could be higher than our budget, which would cause us to go back in and modify the drawings, which could possibly take a little bit longer. So what the study said was the CSP was very good. If you look down at the best suited, it seemed to be best suited for small or medium projects that weren't very complicated in scope, because the bid process is 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Learning what's in the project to be able to price it correctly. When you go into the CMAR, the contractor is involved early on, so you may lose some of the owner's criteria because the contractor is going to be more involved in making sure the prices are good. But we at Fort Bend are involved in all these meetings, so we stay involved and make sure that what we want we're getting, and we try to look at cost evaluation in areas that don't affect education, don't affect safety, and more importantly, things that you can't see. But what we found, what they brought up with and also the contractor is part of the team versus CSP, they're almost like a hard bid type process. But on larger projects, as you can see, best suited is on larger, very complex projects, that process tends to work a little bit better. Doesn't say that CSP won't, but that one works better because you have the contractor on board from early on in the process. There were some disadvantages that we found in the CMAR having to do with being able to see their costs to make sure that they're validated, and we basically are involved in all of that. The great thing about CMAR, because we're doing two projects right now, is that the books are open. We get to see all the bids coming in. We be able to read the subcontractor's bids. We know everything that's in it, and we can verify that there's no loose ends in it. On
Go ahead.
the next page on 6.6 basically is a very good checklist, if you will, that kind of shows the positives of both CSP and CMAR and how that relates to our needs.
Okay, moving along to the programming phase, we have what's called design guidelines and construction standards. And Tom, if you would please show them that large book right there. This was actually a board goal in 2011, and they hit their mark. The board hit the mark in February of 2012 and actually adopted that book. SHW was the architect that was the design professional on that, and all the curriculum instruction department input is critical to the process. In your handout on tab 7, what we have done for you is just taken the science guidelines out of that large book right there and highlighted a few things that Tom's going to go over for elementary, middle, and high school science requirements.
We have added a couple sheets out of this document here that basically describes every classroom in every school that we have, elementary, middle school, and high school. So what we've done is try to do a little sample here to show you the differences between elementary, middle school, and high school as it relates to science. So on sheet 7.1, you'll see that in an elementary school, we have one science classroom. And as you can see on the right-hand side, it really dials down on what's in that classroom as far as furniture and desktops and sinks and things like that. So it's an excellent guide, and every room in every school is written in this document. On 7.2, you can see that now we're on the bottom right-hand side. We're in middle school. Science labs, it says 1, but if you look at the location, there's 3 labs per grade, so there would be actually 6 science labs in a middle school. And continuing on for 7.3, it just shows you the continuation of a typical layout for different classrooms for middle schools. We get to 7.4, we're back into science. The science lab, you can see that there's 8 science labs for high schools. You go to the next page, 7.5, you actually have a marine science lab, so that's 8 plus 1. And then we also have chemistry labs and physical science. So you can see the process as we get through the schools, there's more science labs. So you'll see the same thing throughout this document. The last page there on 7.6, it actually shows auxiliary type rooms with storage and science labs and things like that. So that's really the basis of that document that really dials down on every classroom and it also gets into administrative and training and conference rooms.
And so several times, Ms. James, you have asked about the design guidelines, and I am very glad to be able to finally produce these for the entire board at once and just kind of show you how detailed they really are. So it's not only the space that's required, but it's also the use that's required and any special considerations for those spaces. Going forward, one of the things we're going to have to land on is a scheduled and systematic review of this document to make sure that it's updated and kept updated, because things do change. Things change over time.
One thing I would add is education is one part of this document, but also is our building construction guidelines. And as we complete our projects, we always are reevaluating what we're doing in construction, the positive and the negatives that have occurred on a project, and we're looking at updating these as section by section in the construction phase, especially new materials come out, mechanical systems, things like that.
So moving from the program phase into the design phase, the first thing we want to talk about is the board approval of schematic design. And since Dr. Dupree has been here, we have been making it a practice to bring to the board for approval schematic design of projects. And the reason that's important is because that lets us know that the board and the design team are on the same page with regard to the basic elements, and it kind of gives us an affirmative signal to begin the heavy design. On tab 8 in your book is just a reminder of the most recent schematic design y'all have approved of Elementary 47, and that's just the first and second floor of Elementary 47. Since approval of the schematic design on September 15th, just to give you an idea of the volume of meetings, we have already had 14 design meetings of different varieties for Elementary 47 since September 15th. Because y'all probably hear these terms a lot, I wanted to bring these terms up. We're not going to say a whole lot about them, but after schematic design, there comes what's called design development. Design development is really the heavy design stage when the systems and components of our building are actually selected and we start putting the individual pieces together. And this is also when construction estimates start to arrive. And we actually already have our first construction estimate from Bartlett Koch for Elementary 47. And we'll be talking to y'all that here in the near future. And then construction documents, CDs, so we go from SD to DD to CD. You know, we have to have acronyms. And so construction documents, just wanted to introduce that term. That's both the project drawings, you know, everyone knows about the rolled drawings, and then there's also the specification manual. And Tom has brought the specification manual. I believe that's from the kitchen renovation project.
Yeah, this would be a small one. Elementary 46 and 47 would be almost 3 times as thick as this, because it dials down on everything in construction that has to do with that project.
Now, two of the hot topics in design that we want to talk about in detail on tab 8 are the handicap accessibility, or ADA, people call it ADA, and also LEED. So Tom has some more forms to go through on tab 8 after the schematic design drawings.
As you're probably all aware, there's a federal and a state accessibility code, and it touches on employment, construction, it touches on all kinds of aspects. This is just Texas. We also have the federal code in our book, in our library also. As you can see, this is a lengthy process that we deal with. 8.3, 8.4, these are all 8.5, these are all paperwork that we have to submit. For Texas accessibility standards, we have to submit all of our working drawings, our construction documents, to the state. There are certified people independent of the state that will review the drawings, write us a report of what meets ADA, what does not meet ADA. At the end of the process, when we finish construction, we also have to go back and have our buildings reviewed. What I've implemented is a process where we do the testing and the checking of the construction before final pay applications, and that way we have that hook, if you will, to get the contractor to finish and correct everything that might be not up to par before we do final payment. Otherwise, we are responsible to meet these guidelines. But 8.6, 8.7, these are all architectural barrier paperwork that we as the owner are required to submit. The architect has to meet the code, but ultimately in the state of Texas, the owner is responsible for meeting all those requirements. The next one is we're getting into the LEED. This is a typical LEED document book. So if you ever come over to our office, you'll see hundreds of books because we have books for code and MEP and electrical and everything that we have to comply with. This here is for elementary 46, and as you can see at the bottom, page 8.10. And this is a standard, if you will, checklist of things that we go after. Obviously, for standard certification, if you look at the bottom right-hand side, is 40 to 49 credits. So typically what we would do on the beginning of a project, we would look at going for 48 or 49 because you're not always going to get every point. That way you've got a comfort level to get your certification at 40. But when we look through these, we look for, and pretty much the industry knows now that certain ones are easier to get than others and cost less. So we tend to really evaluate them as far as what it costs to get that point versus another point, and then we select it. But we're always concerned because of students is air quality in our building, mechanical, electrical systems for cost and energy savings, things like that. There are some things that you can capture, low-hanging fruit, that have to do with sight and bicycle racks and things. It's amazing the little things that you can pick up points to.
Yeah, just to say a couple of more items on the handicap accessibility reviews, that kicks in for any project over $50,000. And there was a time early in my career when these rules were first coming on and starting to really gain traction. There was spotty compliance, I guess you could say. But smart building departments eventually caught on, building departments and inspection departments. And so now when you actually apply for a permit, you have to give them your TDLR registration number as part of the permit application package to even get started in the process. And then on the LEED criteria on page 8.10, I just wanted to point out that the highest category, as you look down through there, you've got sustainable sites, water efficiency and energy and atmosphere, materials and resources, but the highest category is energy and atmosphere at 33 points. And that's because it's important. And then if you combine that with the water efficiency, that is by far the lion's share of the points. So resource conservation is important. So let's see. As we get into the construction phase, we have even more documents to share with you. If you'll turn to tab 9, please. Tom is going to continue to talk about some more of the design and construction documents that we use to track projects.
As you can probably understand, is that when you start a process, you're dealing with a lot of information from programming and talking to different departments at Fort Bend to find out what the latest information we need to do as far as developing floor plans and educational information for classrooms and IT information as far as computers and data and where we're going and directions and all of that. This is really what I feel is one of the best that I've seen in the industry. It's a checklist to where not all these items you will need on your project, but they're not only detailed in everything that you need to check on your project to verify that you need, but also they're in the sequence of when you need it during the construction process and the design process. So if you look at 9.1 and you see that I highlighted like a receive 100% schematic design, all of the information above that really needs to be pretty much finalized or worked through by the time you get there. So you can, and we also use this for our, what we call our checks and balances. In our weekly reviews, we go through this on our one-on-ones with all our project managers to see where we're at on our projects, to verify. So this is really one way that we use to make sure that we're going in the right direction and we haven't missed anything. The next page, you can see we're getting into authorizing consultants to proceed with the design development. So now we're getting into design development. And as you walk your way through here, on 9.3, authorization of consultants to start with construction documents. So it's going from our SDs, schematic design, DDs, design development. It works through the process. The next page, 9.4, it gets into proceeding to the bidding proposal, where whether it's CSP or CMAR, we still have to bid it out, final documents. So everything before that, easements, verifying utilities are in place, that wall sections are done, that we've looked at roof components. There's checklists for everything in that process. So it's very comprehensive and an excellent way that we can really test how well of a job we're doing. It goes through on 9.5, we're getting into actually, we had one project, Telfair, where we actually had to get with the Federal Aviation Administration on a final approach. I mean, it dials down to everything that could come up on a project so that you don't miss anything. And then it goes all the way through the last page on 9.6. It gets into closing out the project, the building's complete, looking at warranties, substantial completion, and all of that. So it aids us all in making sure nothing is missed and that our paperwork is in order. We have organized ourselves in teams. We have a project manager that oversees the project, but we also have other team members like MEP and field people on staff that are really knowledgeable of construction, and we bring them together in our team meetings to really dial down on the drawings. So we're doing 30, 60, and 90% reviews with the architects. So we're not depending 100% on our architects. We're making sure that those documents comply. So the next sheet, 9.8, is kind of really our list of everybody that's involved with this project. It has to do with city officials, contractors, consultants. So in any position, if I get a call from Max, and what is the status of this, if that person's not here and can't answer it, we can go to here and find the right person. This next sheet on 9.12 is basically a typical meeting agenda. We have weekly meetings on site with our contractor and key subcontractors and all of our consultants. So let me walk you through this quickly. Obviously, the first thing we talk about is general safety. We talk about safety of the project, what is going on site. If they're doing foundations and they're digging holes, are they covering them up and protecting them? We have chain link fence on 46 all the way around the property, so you can't get on property. On 9.13, you can see that we get into talking about the project review, the building pad, the utilities. We actually walk through that, and more importantly, we talk about schedule of our project and where we are as far as construction. RFIs, requests for information. This is an opportunity for the contractor and the subs to ask us questions about or clarifications to the drawings, or there's something not clear if you look at section such and such in the specifications. So we're there to help support that subcontractor and contractor so they know exactly what we want in our building and how we want it built. Then we get, but that gets into information and get meeting notes from previous meetings and how well we answered the question, were there any still outstanding issues? It's just kind of like reviewing the meeting notes from your last meeting. On 9/14, we get into change orders, any issues that may come up in the field that was unknown. Soils report didn't find it, and we were drilling footings and we found a bunch of sand. So day-to-day issues that might come up. And then,
And please notice that it says no change orders discussed at that meeting. So,
what we're really working hard on is developing drawing packages that have been scrutinized by not only our engineers and architects, but also by our in-house staff. And now with CMAR, they're also working on some of the constructability. So we should be getting to the point where I hope that we don't see those on our projects unless it's an owner-requested item or something that's really unusual. Getting into weather logs, rain schedule delays, things like that. On 9/15, it gets into lead. We have lead discussions in every meeting, both in design in every meeting and in construction. Because construction has a large part of lead because we are tracking materials that are going to be recycled. We're tracking to make sure the materials have come to the site within a 500-mile radius. There's an enormous number of lead requirements both in design and in construction that we have to track and follow. If we don't have the right paperwork, even though we met the criteria of lead, the USGBC could deny us for those points. So we have to really make sure that we have all the points. We also have a lead consultant on staff through SHW that assists the contractor in making sure that paperwork is correct. So you can see that our field meetings are very detailed from the beginning to the end of them. Okay. The next one, I wanted to bring a large one, but it would have been too big to really show. But on sheet 9/16, I believe it is, this is what we call like a 2 or a 4 week look ahead. A standard construction schedule would have 500 to 600 items on it. It tells you from the beginning, install your perimeter security fence, build foundations, cut the dirt. Every process throughout the job is on there. So that sheet could be 30 inches by 42 inches, and there'd be 3 of them that cover a whole wall. But it's our way to be able to look at it very quickly in a meeting and tell where we're at. We're ahead here, we're behind here. Then we use this document here really to be able to get caught back up. We're 3 days behind on this work, we're 5 days behind on this work. So this gives the contractor, the architect, and us in the next week an ability to be able to look at that and see how we're going to get caught up and stay on schedule. If we stay on schedule, that helps us a lot of ways in not having a lot of extra overtime. The other issue about construction in a lot of our neighborhoods is they're already built. So we have homes. So we've got to be very concerned about bringing dirt off site and keeping the site clean and the streets clean and not pouring concrete at 2 a.m. with lights and a lot of noise. So we have to factor all of those things into our construction. The next item, 9/17, is really how we track requests for information from our contractor. They may have, some projects, they may have 20 or 30, other projects, they may have 50 or 75. But it also, in every meeting that we have, we go through this and we go, hey, the mock-up sketch, we never did that, it's still open. So we can track every item that's still outstanding. Trying to move along maybe a little quicker here. On 9/18, this is our submittal log, and a submittal log is really all about what we call shop drawings. The construction drawings really tell the contractor how to price it and how to build it. The shop drawings are all about how the subcontractor actually makes the metal panel for the roof. Okay, the drawings say how big it is and how wide it is and what the shape of it is, but shop drawings actually say how to cut the metal. It says when you're building a millwork or casework, it tells you how many pieces of plywood and all that. So this is really how the subcontractor actually builds the product that he's going to deliver to the site. So as you can see, it's very detailed. And the architect and we review all those documents to make sure they haven't missed anything, but more importantly, to make sure they comply with our standards. No, I'm sorry, that's not the type of door frame we want to use. We want to use a heavier gauge door frame for exterior doors because we've had some very bad luck with those. So we get into all of those things. So just to let you know, that's one sheet. So every door, hardware, metal studs, everything that goes in that building has a shop drawing. So add all those up and take all the time it takes to look at every one of those to verify. Very time consuming.
And that is the process, you know, all specs generally will say call out a spec and then say or equal. This is the process that we go by to determine whether something is or equal or not.
Trying to wrap this up. The next one is 919. This is probably one of the most important documents that we really deal with and one that we take very high control of, and that's our pay apps. This is pay application for professionals and or contractors. 919 really shows you kind of an overview of what the costs are, but really the checks and balances. The contractor, his job is to review all of his subcontractor numbers. The architect and engineers review it. We, project managers in our office, review it, and I review it. So if you look at the next sheet, this is really what we would call a standard AIA document for pay applications. And the top sheet really is an overall breakdown, but like on sheet 921 and 922, this, just like the shop drawings, is very detailed. It's line item by line item. It gets into tree removals, it gets into dirt work, it gets into concrete and foundations, steel, stairs, handrails, glazing, doors. So every line item, everything in the building will have a price. And if you look at the percentage category, that's one of the ways that we evaluate how accurate their proposals are. On the next sheet would be 923. This is something that I use very well to be able to track how we're doing on a project. This is another checks and balances that we have in place for our team. With this, you can look at how much money is expended, and pretty much it's not perfect accuracy, but it's a good way to track where you're at on your project. So you can look at this, and if you're 50% on your schedule, but you're only 32% on your construction cost, we need to start looking at things. So it's a way to make sure that the contractor's staying on schedule. He may say he's on schedule, but when you look at the numbers, it'll help you better analyze that information. Plus, it's a good way for us to track how we're doing on our projects. To show you how detailed we get on 924 and 925 is actually